Good afternoon to you all. Thank you so much for joining us for what is our Disability Partnership Conference 2021 with the working title of Disability and Hidden Impairment. It is Friday the 3rd of December. It is also International Day of People with Disabilities, and we will reference that during the presentation. So a very warm welcome to you. I'm Giles Matsell. I'm the Head of Equality, Diversity Inclusion at Nottingham University Hospitals, and I'm co-chairing today with...
That's me, Tracy Litherland, and I'm Clinical Trainer from Nottingham City Care. We're both hosting today and looking forward to the event, and we both have hidden disabilities.
Thanks, Tracy. It's great to be working with you once again. So we do have an interpreter from NSLIS, and that's Claire. And we just wanted to check if there's anybody that needs an interpreter that's on the call. Please do let us know. Otherwise, Claire is excused, but we'll just give that a moment as a few more people join us. Are you staying with us, Claire, for a moment or two? I think there's a few more people joining.
She'll wait just a couple of minutes in case people join. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay.
That was a bit quick for me, but I think the idea was that she will hang around if anybody does join, and hope we have a good session.
We didn't quite catch that, Claire, but thank you, and please stay with us for a few moments. So if you've literally just joined us, Claire's going to be interpreting, and if just let us know if you do require interpreting, pop it in the chat. That would be great if you can. Thank you, and we'll pick that up. Okay, onwards. So a little bit of housekeeping. If you're not speaking, if you can turn your sound off, that would be greatly appreciated. We are recording the session if you don't want to be on camera, and it's also really helpful for us as we have an increasing number of people joining to reduce the bandwidth, if you could turn the cameras off. But it's always nice to see a few people out there, so it's entirely up to you, but we would recommend that you turn your camera off to save on the bandwidth, if that's okay. Thank you very much. We'll monitor the chat as we go along, and also you can tweet out about the event if you wish. It's at UK Disability History Month, UK DHM, and we'll pop that into the chat function for you so you can see all the links, and each organisation represented who are planning, who have been part of the planning group, also have their own hashtags as well. So do feel free to tweet out about the event, and just make it would be greatly appreciated. So the reason for today, well, once again, thank you so much for joining us. Today, the 3rd of December, is the International Day of People with Disabilities. This is the official background, the official logo for that, and of course it is part of Disability History Month. It also is the 5th anniversary, which is I can't believe it really, of Disability Confidence Scheme, which of course replaced 2 ticks several years ago, and this is our 5th partnership conference, I think, together with Nottingham Partners, the 2nd as an integrated care system. We are absolutely delighted that you've taken the time to attend this important event. Thank you. And Disability History Month reminds us to consider how we continue to make society, the NHS, the local authority, health and social care, a place where everyone gets the best possible experience. Our theme for this year is Hidden Disabilities, and we are delighted to welcome you to our event. Our ICS Disability History Planning Month group have worked extremely hard behind the scenes putting this event together. The content, thanks to our wonderful speakers, will be both engaging, extremely powerful, emotive, inspiring, challenging, hopeful, but also optimistic, and it will give us much to reflect on. As an ICS, we are committed to ensuring disability and differently abled inclusion is at the forefront of our minds. And working collaboratively is what has got us here today. So thank you once again for attending and for everybody involved. Now, to see some of the people behind the organisations as part of the planning group, if you just want to come on camera and give us a wave. So representatives from Nottingham University Hospitals NHS Trust, Nottinghamshire Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust, hi, Nottingham City Care, the NHS Nottingham and Nottinghamshire Clinical Commissioning Group, hello, Nottingham Fire Service, hi, Nottingham City Council, Nottinghamshire County Council, Sherwood Forest Hospitals, and Nottingham City Homes. Welcome to you all. Thank you.
So can I just say that it's been really good working with everybody in partnership to get this event to where we're at today. It's been real fun as well getting here. And it's my duty to start introducing our fantastic speakers and videos and interactive sessions as well. And I'd like to be the first to introduce Pulp Friction. Pulp Friction is a social enterprise created to develop skills of people with learning difficulties. Jill and Jessie Carter, the founders of Pulp Friction, spoke at the 2019 conference and provided an excellent buffet last time as well. So I hope you've all got a cup of coffee and something to keep you going through this session. This film showcases the work of Pulp Friction, not just of the choir, but also the other activities and the value and skills they bring to their members. I really hope you enjoy this. I'm really looking forward to it.
Red and yellow and pink and green, orange and purple and blue. I could sing a rainbow, sing a rainbow, sing a rainbow too. Boys, listen to us as sing up to sea. You can sing a rainbow, sing around with me. You were knocking on my door. I said love is a two-way road. You don't care no more, am I going crazy? Needed you just to help forget it all. And it was easy, you put the records on to replay. Danced till we couldn't see straight, till the morning came along. Don't need the weekend, we don't wait until the evening. We don't need to find a reason to turn it up and sing along. 'Cause that's what friends are for.
friends, pulp, friction, cook and eat, pulp, friction, sing and dance, pulp, friction. This is what we love.
That's what friends are for. Bravo, bravo.
So fantastic. And I've got my own little rainbow there, look, which reminded me. So thank you, Pulp Friction, and everybody involved. It was absolutely fantastic. And well done.
Wonderful. Such a shame we lost the sound right at the very end, but I was very touched. I was signing along at the very beginning because it's something I knew, but yeah, I really enjoyed that. So
and just so people know, this video will be available afterwards, so you will be able to watch that again and share it with your colleagues in your own organisations as well. Okay, so moving on to our next item on the agenda, I'm very delighted to welcome Stella Thorley, who's going to be talking about unconscious bias and microaggressions. Well, Stella's worked at my organisation, Nottingham University Hospitals, for 15 years as a diabetic eye screener, grader. And 6 months after joining our workforce, Stella was diagnosed as having MS, multiple sclerosis. And so began her journey as a disabled person, during which she then got in touch with me to ask, back in 2009 now, a long time ago, to ask if she could start a disability support network. And so therefore Staffability, which is our network, was essentially born. A name that Stella chose as she was always standing positive about her disability and likes to focus on her abilities for herself and her fellow colleagues. So Stella, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Giles. Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, I've been introduced. I'm going to discuss unconscious bias and microaggressions. So let's make a start with unconscious bias. When we think about unconscious bias, we think talking about the most instinctive part of our psychology. Because we categorize things and people all the time without even really thinking about it. But in order to understand unconscious bias better, we need to bring those thoughts to the forefront of our mind and think about how we might be categorizing people. So it might be, you know, young, old, tall, short, white, black, Asian, man, woman, rich, poor, disabled, non-disabled, and the list goes on really. So the types of unconscious biases that we are going to talk about today are the ones that are most often noticed and found within the workplace. So affinity bias is the first one, and this is also known as similarity bias. It occurs when we treat people more favourably simply because they're like us or they're like other people that we like. So the similarities can include any sort of shared commonality, including everything from the likes, dislikes and appearance to the schooling or career history. The next I want to talk about is conformity bias. Now this happens when your views are swayed too much by those people around us, our peers, who we try to conform to what they like as well, because we respect them. So it occurs when we seek their acceptance and hold their opinions and views as ours as well. Perception bias is another one. This is quite a harmful one in that it happens when we treat individuals based on simplistic and often incorrect stereotypes and general assumptions as opposed to the reality. It can encompass a range of other biases as well, such as age, gender, height biases, Another one is confirmation bias, that's quite harmful in that it refers to how people primarily search for bits of evidence that back up those sort of opinions, those perception biases, and rather than looking at the whole picture, and it leads to a very selective observation, meaning that you overlook other information and instead focus on those things that fit in your view. So how can we address unconscious bias? Well, one of the techniques is reconditioning, and first of all you need to acknowledge that your unconscious biases exist and get to know them really well so that you can adopt a different way of thinking about the flaws in your mental preconditioning. We can do this by challenging our assumptions, practicing empathy, embracing diversity, and being mindful of our words and actions.
As part of that conversation is obviously it needs to be played out.
Ableism is a discrimination and a social prejudice against people who have disabilities or who are perceived to have disabilities. It can take the form of ideas and assumptions, stereotypes, attitudes and practices, physical barriers in the environment, and a larger scale sort of oppression. Ableism devalues and limits the potential of people with disabilities. It also happens when it's unintentional, and most people are completely unaware of the impact of their words and actions, which leads me on to microaggressions. So this is a term for brief, commonplace, daily verbal, behavioural and environmental sort of indignities, whether they're intentional or unintentional, that communicates a hostile, derogatory or negative attitudes towards stigmatised, culturally marginalised groups. Now, some of these are said by well-meaning people, but they do cause offence. And here are a few examples of microaggressions. You don't need that wheelchair. I've seen you walk. I can't believe you're deaf. You sound so normal. Oh, my cousin has the exact same position, so I know all about it. Why are you walking with a white stick? I've seen you reading a newspaper. You're not disabled, you're just clumsy. Have you been on the booze? I'm so OCD about my desk being clean and tidy. You have MS. Well, they say things happen for a reason. But you look just so normal though. So they're just a few examples of microaggressions. There is a video on YouTube that you can watch where it talks about microaggressions being like mosquito bites, and it just explains microaggressions really well. So yeah, look at it. But yeah, from when you hear these sort of microaggressions, you have to sort of hold these internal reflection questions. What was the intention? What were the assumptions behind what was said or did? And what was the impact? Because microaggressions can invalidate someone or make them feel sort of othered. So we have to think about how we can challenge these. One way is to react straight away to the microaggression, regardless of onlookers, tell them that what they said is out of line and make it quite heated, but this will not help the person to learn what to say or what it is that they said that was not acceptable or the reasons behind it. Another way is to tell the person that they shouldn't say these sort of things and reel off a long list of why not. The person may feel, though, that they are being attacked and back away, or become bored and stop listening, or start being aggressive towards the person challenging the microaggression. And the best way, I think, but sometimes quite difficult, is to take the person aside, choosing another time potentially, and quietly and discreetly explaining that, you know, they may not have meant it to cause upset. It wasn't probably their intention, but it did cause offence and upset to the person. Then explain the reasons why. People are much more likely to take on board something that is being said in a calm manner, and a lot more likely to apologise and say that they did not mean to say that, and they will try not to say it again. And that's ultimately what you want to achieve from the conversation. So let's all help people and educate and raise awareness to allow people to be accountable for their words and actions, because saying it once is rude, twice is mean, a third time, and that's bullying. Thank you.
Stella, thank you so much for that. So thought-provoking, and I, like Giles is just doing, it's so sad that we can't all clap, because actually, you know, if this was in reality and we weren't virtual, you would almost have a standing ovation. Yes, you know what I mean. So thank you so much. And I really look forward to working with you in the future and thinking about how we can challenge these microaggressions, certainly. So we're moving on now to a subject that is very close to my heart. This is dealing with dyslexia. It is a film, and it is from Gary Wilson, who is an operational watch manager at Nottingham Fire and Rescue Service. He's recorded a piece about his dyslexia journey. In the film, he shares his experience of being diagnosed with dyslexia, what it means to him, and how it helps him. It also shows some of the mechanisms Gary has found useful to assist him in overcoming barriers. So I'm going to hand you over, and it's going to be Gary.
Okay, my name's Gary Wilson. I'm a watch manager at Nottingham Fire and Rescue Service. Operational, that means I'm at the fire station. I'm going to talk to you today about myself. I've got one of the hidden disabilities, which is what they call neurodiverse. So I happen to be dyslexic. I'm going to talk to you about the challenges, how I discovered I was dyslexic, because I didn't find out until about 10 years ago, and the positives from actually being dyslexic, as well as the challenges of it as well. So the challenges really started at school. I wasn't very academic. My English and maths were particularly bad. Again, dyslexia and dyscalculus sometimes come hand in hand together. In my case, they did. My English was terrible. I had a really bad English teacher who belittled me most days, almost every day, calling me thick and stupid, which, as a young person, it's not very nice. But you learn to cope with it in different ways. My way was I was disruptive in class, and also a bit of a class clown. So I was a bit of an idiot in that respect, but that never really changed. You know, still to this day, I'm that same person. So the practical subjects at school, I was really good at. You know, if it was science or woodwork, you know, doing things with my hands, really good. And I carried on through school, eventually reached the end, didn't get the great grades, and I ended up seeing the careers person at school, and I said to her, I want to be a firefighter. And she just laughed. And I sat there in the room with her, and she just laughed and said, your grades aren't going to be good enough. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll take that on the chin, and I did. And look now, you know, I'd love to see that person, because I'd wipe that smile off the face. You know, I am a firefighter, I'm a watch manager, it's great. So I left school, became a bricklayer, again utilising that skill of using your hands, really enjoyed it, and did further education at college, because I knew I wasn't stupid, so I thought I'd actually learn a little bit more. So while I was in the learning game, I carried on. Did surveying and levelling, building measurement accounts, and building management, and I realised then I'm not that thick person. I can actually achieve things if I put my mind to it. It just means I'm working very hard. but I'll do it. So firefighter, I'm going to go for it. It's my dream job. Let's do it. So I did. I applied. 3 times it took me to get through. The first time I failed on the English. The second time I failed on the English. And the reason being is the English test, if you had more than 5 spelling mistakes, you're kicked out. Needless to say, I got 6 each time. The third time I passed. So straight through, got onto the course, and I loved the course, absolutely brilliant. Thoroughly enjoyed it, did really well. Most of the exams or assessments, the theory ones, did quite good in there, which quite surprised me. You know, I was up in the 90% until they made a decision to reduce the time. So the time scale was reduced down to by about half an hour less, and all of a sudden I dropped from scoring 90% down to 70 or below, which was starting to be in fail category there. Luckily, I managed to pull through and get through the course. Things have been different today. You know, if the course had realised I was dyslexic now, they'd have allowed that more time, but then they didn't. So I got through that, got to a fire station, thoroughly enjoyed my time there. It was great. Loved every single minute of it. Absolutely fantastic. Did dyslexia interfere with anything there? At times, yeah. Some of my written things on the BA board, for instance, that when you commit people into burning building, wasn't necessarily very good writing. And I'd be belittled by that by some other people, you know, the BA managers that come up and give me what for because I've wrote something incorrect on the board. And also, I did some presentations to schools. And when I went to the schools, one of the things that it was a presentation on arson, and I said about people losing the jobs. And it's only the kids that realise you've spelt lose wrong. You put loose instead of lose. And I just laughed it off. I'm that class clown, like I said. So I carried on. Eventually came across a really good manager who suggested that I put myself for promotion and became a supervisory manager myself. And it was only through that I discovered I was dyslexic. I went on a course, and it was very good, covered all sorts of issues like the coping mechanisms that dyslexia has, the strengths, the challenges that we face, and also the famous dyslexics. Yeah, and it doesn't discriminate, you know, from royalty down to anybody, you know, it really doesn't discriminate. You know, there's famous dyslexics like Albert Einstein and Richard Branson, Winston Churchill, Will Smith. You know, there's famous people out there that are dyslexics and got on with their life really well. And I thought, oh, okay, that's reasonable. Let's carry on with this. This course is great. I'm loving it. And I recognised the traits that they were saying that, you know, that we didn't do very well at school. We struggled with this English, but we communicated well on other things as well. So it was like, I'm seeing a lot of these traits coming in. So I could be dyslexic here, but I didn't really think so. So we did a little test at the end. And the test was a very quick questionnaire, and I'm sat with another person at the side of me, and we're both filling out this questionnaire together. And I looked across at his, he looked across at mine, and we got to mark one another's. And I scored really high, and he scored really low. And we just looked and laughed at one another and said, "One of us is disabled here, mate." And you know, which was quite, for us, it was funny, but it meant something to us at the same time. You know, we did feel it. And the tutor came round and she looked at the paper and she said, "Can I have a word with you after?" And it was me she was talking to. So she took me aside and I discovered I was dyslexic. I was tested, found out I was. What did it mean to me? Firstly, fear and anxiety. I have a disability. You know, it really did worry me. I found out now, after all these years, I have a disability. What happens now then? Will it change me? I thought, no, not really. How have I got on in life so far? I've done all right. Is it stopping me doing my job? No, I'm still doing my job, and I think I'm doing it good. So no, not in that respect. So I then looked at my dyslexia, and I thought, my written communication and things along them lines is poor. It always has been, so nothing new. And then I thought, what is new then? What is new? What this dyslexia? What does it actually mean? It means now that I can get assistance, I can get help, as long as I ask for it. There's Read and Write Gold, which is a computer program that assists with basically writing emails or anything. It's a fantastic tool. And various other things, like if I go on a course at our development centre, I can ask for more time completing in the assignments, and also for I can also get the course notes if I want them first. I can ask for them so they can give me the course notes. I can read through them, so I'm a little bit more prepared when I start, which is all handy stuff. And there's all sorts of other things that are there to help. You know, even coloured overlays to put over paper. So there's a lot of things that are out there for people with dyslexia, as long as you ask for it. So I thought to myself then, what's the positives with dyslexia? I looked at one of the lists that I saw, and it said dyslexic people are creative, they're great visual thinker, they think out the box, natural problem solvers. Well, that's something in this job that's really great. You're on a fire ground, you need to be a great problem solver. Very observant, and we're empathic. We build relationships very easy, and that leads to us being great natural leaders. I thought, this list is me. Do they help me? Damn right they do. These are superhero qualities as far as I'm concerned. But I also realise now that superheroes also need help. Iron Man has the Avengers and Jarvis. And what are the Avengers? The team that helps Iron Man. Yeah, they help one another and bring lots of other qualities. And by having that assistance of other people, it really helps you. And Jarvis, he's his computer-assisted technology. Read and Write Gold is my Jarvis. And what would I say to other dyslexic people? Don't be afraid of asking for assistance. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And be proud of the great qualities that you actually have. At the end of the day, you're a superhero after all.
Well, that was absolutely fantastic. Wouldn't you agree, Tracy?
Absolutely. And I'm going to look for my superhero cape as we leave the conference.
Brilliant. I was just reflecting, what a fantastic, personal, honest, authentic story that was, and it actually links to Stella's presentation about people being quick to judge. And I thought to myself, you know, what absolute credit to Notts Fire Service, but also so good that the service appreciates Gary for who he is and the diverse skills that he brings. Absolutely fantastic.
Wonderful.
So on to our next speaker, and this is a live presentation, and it's going to be Laurie Edwards Suarez, who's going to be sharing some humour with us about her journey back to a cyborg.
Hi everyone, yes, my name is Laurie and I work for Notts Healthcare, and I was a cyborg for 18 months. So first I want to start with a slight warning that I am an asthmatic that's been playing up slightly. I will pause to breathe at points when I'm hoping you guys are laughing, but if you're not laughing, it's just my breathing. Just roll with me with this. So for the last few years, I've been registered disabled, and during COVID, a lot of people can't see it because obviously when I'm just sat like this, you can't see a lot. But I do walk with mobility aids, and they're not subtle. I have brought them here because they're not. But somehow people still miss they're a thing, and like they're not subtle. And it does prove for some interesting situations, because I was walking around London, and someone says to me, "Why have you not brought an umbrella?" And I just had to hold on because I had a work badge on, so I had to be polite. I don't know how people want me to hold an umbrella with a crutch in each hand. I don't know where they wanted me to put it. And, you know, I've had some very creative answers from people. Most of them I do not recommend. So I have got some visible illnesses, and we'll roll with it. But I did spend 18 months as a cyborg, and to meet the actual definition of a cyborg is someone whose function is enhanced or regained by cybernetics. And I wish it was a cooler power than it was, but it allowed me to pee. And it's always an interesting thing to discuss as someone who is quite young and in their 20s, the inability to pee. But I stopped being able to for a while. And so I was offered this really cool treatment. It's called a stimulator. And they implanted a battery into my backside. To make it even cooler, I have a phone that deliberately controls it. So for 18 months, I had to carry around 3 phones: my own phone, my work phone, and my bum phone. And it definitely poses some interesting moments. But unfortunately, for a while, that treatment then stopped being available. So I had to trade in being a cyborg for a power that most of the population have, which is the ability to pee standing up. And, you know, most people have about 20, 30 years on me. Not as fun a skill as I wish it was. Like, I'm quite looking forward to going back to being a cyborg. Problem is that the device that I use for that is called a suprapubic catheter. And it is an acronym of an SPC. Now, those of you that work NHS social care, we really like our acronyms in the NHS. And unfortunately, SPC comes up twice in my life. So far, in the last 15, 16 months, I've not got them the wrong way round, because I think equally people in a meeting would be very confused if I got the bladder SPC when they asked for one, and also my consultant urologist might be just slightly confused if he asks to see my SPC and I present to him a graph of mental health data, because I've got them the wrong way round. So the aim is to go back to this device, but the technology is now improving. So they've given me some options. So this festive period, I have to decide which version of this device I want. And the main deciding factor is, do I want to be rechargeable? Which is not a decision I think anyone ever thought we'd have to make in our lifetimes. But there are 2 options of a device. You can either put one in for 5 years and then they just replace it manually, or they can put a slightly different one in and then you get a special belt, and then once a week you sit on the sofa and charge up your backside. And I mean, it sounds cool in so many ways, but it's also a very bizarre situation. So it's definitely interesting to discuss, because obviously it's a urological issue and most people find this a very hush-hush thing. But at this point, I've got to the stage with most of my disabilities that I can't hide some of them, and I obviously don't make it particularly subtle with light up crutches. But you know, I'm stuck with them. We're gonna own it. But also, the advantage to sharing about a lot of this is I've managed to find other people in a similar situation. And when I first became a cyborg in 2019, I didn't know anyone else with it. It was really intimidating. I didn't know how to make the right decisions. Was this the right decision for me? Was it not? But I've actually managed to meet quite a lot of other people that are now having the same decisions to make. And so it's been quite powerful to meet them, and it is quite fun to giggle and meet up with someone else that also is having to charge up their own self. So with any luck, I will have to give up the ability to pee standing up, but I will be going back to being a nice, rechargeable, well, potentially rechargeable, still up for debate, and decide and go back to being a cyborg. I guess the biggest downside to it is that I set off shop alarms, which always makes for a very interesting situation in a shop. I'm not stealing. I'm very sorry. My backside has set off your alarms again. I didn't know how to end this. I should have planned that.
That's okay. That's absolutely hysterical, and it's so nice that you can come with your humorous interpretation of your life as a cyborg. I love it. So thank you so much. And you know, those crutches, we couldn't quite see them, but I could see that they were really out there, and you could really see them. So that was wonderful. Thank you so much. So, really appreciate it. Right, well, we're speeding along now, and our next speaker is it's a film, and it's about accessibility and how far we have come with assistive technology. Trying to say that word, very difficult. Dee Cornt is the Chief Executive of the Dyslexia Association, has worked for the charity for over 30 years. Dee, who is dyslexia herself, has a particular interest in assistive technology and how it can both help both adults and children with dyslexia overcome many difficulties they experience with reading, writing, spelling, time management and organisation. I'm going to now hand you over to watch the film on assistive technology in dyslexia and how far we've come.
Hello, my name is Dee. I'm the Chief Executive of the Dyslexia Association. We are a registered charity that provides services and support for dyslexic people of all ages, as well as providing support for their families, their educators, their employers, and the wider community. I think in terms of the technology that is available to support people with disabilities, there have been huge changes in the last 25 years. Today, I would like to talk about the assistive technology that is available to help people with dyslexia overcome some of the difficulties they might experience, such as reading and comprehending quickly what they are reading about, writing, whether that's taking notes, filling in forms or writing reports, and spelling, which can be a huge issue for some people with dyslexia, or managing and organising your time, your workload and your priorities, or learning and studying. The assistive technology most commonly recommended includes speech recognition, text-to-speech, mind mapping, smartphones and tablets and the many amazing apps that are available, and handheld devices such as smart pens, reading pens and digital dictaphones. So how does speech recognition help? Well, it jump-starts the writing process. If you can dictate, you can very quickly turn your thoughts and ideas into correctly spelt text in your document. There's no more having to worry about how to spell a word or having to dumb down your language and only using the words you know how to spell. The market leader for speech recognition is Dragon by Nuance. Dragon was originally designed for people who couldn't physically use a keyboard. Therefore, you can control your whole PC by voice command. It's a brilliant productivity tool that many people now benefit from using. There are different versions available for personal and professional use, costing between £140 and £350. For business and the workplace, we recommend Dragon Professional Individual, as it can work in environments such as bespoke databases where other speech recognition options can't. However, if you want to see if speech recognition is something that you might find helpful, you could try one of the free versions available, such as Google Voice Typing, Microsoft Windows 10 voice recognition, or if you use a Mac, its enhanced dictation function. These offer very simple speech recognition functions. Their accuracy is not quite as good as Dragon, and they don't have the more complex functionality that Dragon provides. However, they may give you some idea as to whether speech recognition would work for you. And on this page are links to the different versions that are available. If you need support with reading, comprehending quickly and more accurately what you're reading, or with writing, another type of software that can be really text-to-speech. Text Help Read and Write is the market leader for text-to-speech and proofreading software. These packages will read any document you have created, whether that's something such as a Word document or an email. They will read documents that other people have created and sent to you. They will also read PDF documents, web pages, and even text embedded in a picture. These packages also have a bank of proofreading functions, including functions to check your spelling and grammar and punctuation. They will also help you choose the right version of those tricky, confusing words such as there, see, sure, or minor, which have one sound but different spellings and meanings. They also have functions to help with studying and issues such as visual disturbance. One of my other favourite packages is Grammarly. Putting it simply, as you are writing, whether that's a Word document or an email, it checks your spelling, grammar, punctuation and sentence structure and offers you suggestions for how to improve your writing. There are free versions available and also other versions for business settings. It's one of the packages I say I use every single day. There are free basic text-to-speech functions available in Microsoft Office. So it works in Word and Excel and your emails and OneNote. They don't have the proofreading functions that the other packages have, but if you need a simple text reader, they can be very helpful. However, remember, they only work in Microsoft Office, not in something like a bespoke database or website. If you are using Microsoft Edge as your internet browser, if you right-click on it, it will read aloud any of the text on the page. If you're looking for a simple handheld gadget to help with reading, then a reading pen might be helpful. You simply drag the pen over the words in your book and document, scanning the text, which then appears on the screen and is read to you through the earphones that come with it. If you come across a tricky word that you don't understand, it will also give you the dictionary definition for it. There are different versions of the pens available for personal use, for school, and for the workplace. Most modern smartphones and tablets have built-in accessibility functions. You can set them up so that you can dictate your emails and messages and have text read back to you. You just have to know how to turn them on. Here is a link to a step-by-step guide for setting up an iPhone or an iPad. And here is a link to a step-by-step guide for Android phone or tablet such as Samsung. There isn't time during this very short presentation to demonstrate some of the hundreds of amazing apps that are available, but I will tell you about one. It's called Microsoft Seeing AI, and it's the Swiss Army knife of apps. Although it's designed for people with visual impairments, it is particularly helpful if you're dyslexic and have difficulty with reading. You simply open the app and hover the camera over the text and it reads it to you. You can also take photographs of documents or books, which it will then read to you, and it will even read handwriting. It is an amazing app. Unfortunately, only available at the moment for iPhone and iPad. If you want to look for other pieces of software or apps to try, take a look at the Call Scotland website. Call Scotland is part of the University of Edinburgh and is a great source of information and resources, with many links to assistive technology which people can try to help with different disabilities or challenges. In such a short space of time, I can only scratch the surface of this huge topic, but I hope you found it useful. Do try downloading some of the demo copies that the software companies offer and see what works for you. Please check out our website, dyslexia.uk.net, for further information about the Dyslexia Association and the services that we offer. In the top right-hand corner of our webpage, you will find a headset symbol. This is a link to Browse Aloud, which provides speech, reading support, and translation functions, as well as options to change the font size, the background colour, and simplify the page. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you found this helpful.
Well, that was excellent, wasn't it? And
It really was, yes. And I'm really glad that we're recording the session because there was a lot of information in there, Giles, and people might not have got it down quick enough.
yeah, I agree, Tracy. Thank you. And thanks to Dee for doing that for us. It just reminded me of actually that we get so many requests now regarding assessment and making adjustments and so on in our workplaces. And of course, staff can access through Access to Work as well as some of this functionality. But it did also remind me that there's many things that have been developed as part of disability adjustments that have just fallen into everyday use, and voice-to-speech recognition is just one of those that helps us all in many ways, and there's several other things as well which you can find in kitchens and everything everywhere. It's incredible. So I think it takes us to a little comfort break, unless I'm mistaken.
Welcome back, everybody. That was great music there, and I think to me that just showed that hidden abilities and hidden disabilities, you know, are really difficult for people to see, because people are really good at putting on that brave face when they're with friends and colleagues at work.
The masking, absolutely, Tracy.
Absolutely.
And we say thank you for the music, really, to all those images of all our music and entertainment heroes gone by. And yeah, it's sad, but they've left such a strong and inspiring legacy as well. So that takes us to a a short film, actually, about hidden disabilities. And this is a film that was put together by the Staffability group at Nottingham University Hospitals, my organisation. So in December 2019, the Staffability group ran a survey separate to the NHS staff survey, something a little bit more in depth around disability specifically, to learn about disabled staff members' experiences. And in response to the most frequent and similar answers, the following video was created to raise more awareness about hidden disabilities. So let's run the film.
Disabilities are not always visible. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean that it's not real, or that it can be discounted or ignored.
Comments can be really hurtful. Be mindful of what you say, as it could really hurt someone's feelings.
Fatigue is not the same as tiredness, and a nap or going to bed earlier will not help, nor will it stop it.
Mental health is often a disability too. Please can we get rid of the stigma and be open to conversations?
Neurodiversity can be a disability if it affects your day-to-day activity. The Equality Act provides rights for reasonable adjustments and protection against discrimination, harassment, and victimisation. My dyslexia can often cause my confidence to be lowered and a difficulty with recalling facts.
Disabilities can be variable. Some days are better than others, and some hours are better than others.
To ask about our disabilities and how they affect us, we'd rather you ask than guess.
My mental health means that I'm more vulnerable to stress at work and may need some extra support.
I have a valid reason why I use the disabled toilet facilities. Please don't question why I use them.
You might not be able to see my hearing impairment, but please be patient if I don't appear to hear you correctly and you have to repeat yourself. It is even harder for me if you are wearing a face mask as well.
If you know of my disability, it's okay to ask how I'm managing, or if I'm managing okay, but it's not okay to ask me if I've been taking my medication.
If I appear anxious, upset, or even distressed, please don't assume that this is aggressive or challenging behaviour. It may have been caused by the sensory environment, and I might need your help.
I have a learning disability that may cause me to spell things incorrectly sometimes. Please don't criticise or embarrass. Correct me sensitively, please.
Okay, we hope that you enjoyed that very emotive film there. Now, we've been joined by Richard Reiser, who's one of our keynote speakers, really. So by way of introduction, welcome, Richard. Thank you firstly for being here, and it's a great pleasure that you've given up the time to join us. And Richard's a researcher, teacher, campaigner, disability equality expert, filmmaker, writer, public speaker. From 1993 to 2008, he was Director of Disability Equality in Education before taking on his current role as the CEO of World of Inclusion Limited. He's the coordinator and driving force behind Disability History Month UK, thank you, which he and his fellow activists founded in 2010. So I give you a warm welcome, Richard. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Giles. Matt, no, Giles is your surname, is it?
It's
Matt
Giles. That's my first name. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Giles. Is my PowerPoint up? Can we have it put up, please? It was up a minute ago and then it's disappeared. Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, a brief talk, and by the way, that I caught the end of that film, excellent film. If you could send me a copy, I'll put it up on the national website because I thought it really tackled a lot of the issues about hidden impairment. As you can see from the logo for this year, we've got twin themes: hidden impairment, where people have this double whammy because it's hidden. People don't believe them, and then if you do claim your rights to adjustments and so on, then people are always asking what's wrong with you because they can't see it. In fact, around 80% of the 14 million people in the UK who the government think are disabled, we think there are more than that under their definition, have hidden impairments, including things like fatigue, mental health, and neurodiversity, as well as a whole lot of metabolic and other issues, mental health and so on. The other side of what we're talking about, and they are linked in many ways, is relationships and sex, where for many years disabled people have been seen as asexual or not really around on our planet. And I wanted to say a little bit about our logo there, which is the black triangle with the apex pointing up, and our 3 aims: celebrating our lives, challenging disableism, and achieving equality are our 3 logos. Why we chose that is it represents, when inverted the other way around, it was what disabled people were made to wear in concentration camps and elsewhere before they were exterminated by the Third Reich on their killing program of both disabled adults and children, which is estimates vary between 300,000 and over 1 million in Greater Germany. And most of those doctors and scientists who were involved in that program were never brought to trial, and many went on to be professors of medicine all over the world with these extreme eugenicist ideas. So we keep that there to remember what human beings are capable of if we don't actually challenge their thinking. Come to the next slide, please. Yeah. So looking really at the historical view of how we relate to each other, for a long time, the traditional view, we were either seen as innocents, perpetual children, or alternatively seen as voracious monsters, good luck charms, objects of fetish. And then pseudoscience came in the 19th century, and various theories came along, most of which now have been disproved, but prevent breeding and spreading physical and social conditions, sex segregation in the poor law houses, asylums, long stay hospitals, special schools. It's interesting, if we look at the history of the poor law, when from 1834, the Poor Law Review, there was no longer parish poor law handed out to people. It had to be in-house relief. And this was really to stop people who might want to shirk working. Been a recent echo of that in some of the things that have been said on benefit fraud, to have to go into the same punitive environment, which was just about above starvation. But although it was aimed to stop families who were skiving, supposedly, by 1860, the vast majority of people in the poorhouses in every council area and parish were old people and disabled people. And there was strict segregation there, which is quite important. From 1808 to 1850, we had the growth of segregation of people with mental health issues, and every county had to have an asylum. And then a further attack on disabled people came from, which is all of this was class-based, really. It was a fear of the mob after the French Revolution as much as breeding. And eugenic ideas coming from Darwin's cousin Dalton, and then into the eugenics movement, which agitated very strongly in the last part of the 19th century, saying that these morally defective imbeciles, idiots, and feeble-minded people would weaken the gene pool of the British Empire to dominate people around the world. So it was also racist in its approach that we were better than everybody else. And it continued to a royal commission in 1908, which said the ridiculous thing that a woman with learning difficulties would have a child who was 7 times more likely to have learning difficulty than herself. Shows you the complete nonsense of all of this. But it was believed by large numbers of people, and the 1913 Act was put in place. It didn't have sterilisation, though Churchill, as Home Secretary, had wanted that. Instead, it had separation by sex. Against this, after the 1970s and 80s, we get desegregation and we get the human rights approach brought, which was in the 1947 Charter of Human Rights, but didn't really apply to disabled people until we fought very hard, first of all in 1980, standard rules, and then eventually in 2008, the International Convention. Those rights are the right to family life, the right to education, equality for girls and women, access to sexual reproductive health, right to make decisions about your life, protection from invasive healthcare procedures, and so on. Next slide, please. A recent historian, Simon Jarrett, has written a very interesting book. If you're interested in disability history, look at his work on English Heritage website, where he looked at time and place and disability across 1,000 years. And there's lots in the landscape all around us, going from the leper houses in the 12th, 13th century, the dissolution of the monasteries, which was the NHS of its time when they were chopped off. That's when we got the growth of vagrancy. And then we had to decide between sturdy beggars and the old and infirm who were entitled. And this distinction in benefits is still there in our social security system now. He goes on to talk about, the period, which echoes what I was saying, that in the 18th century, people with learning difficulties, mental health issues, were just in the community. They were talked about as not there, not all there, away with the fairies, but they were tolerated, they were there, and many people actually worked for a living. And it was only in the 19th century that this incarceration takes place, which I've explained, leading through to the increase. So by the 1950s, we had 500,000 disabled people locked away, mostly under the NHS. And then the deinstitutionalization started, funnily enough, led by Enoch Powell, largely for financial reasons, and then care in the community, which was never really supported. And then in the last 10 years, austerity, which has really undermined care in the community. Next slide, please. And looking at sexuality, which was an unlooked at thing, up until the mid-90s, the disabled people's movement had fought for rights and been successful in a way in getting the Disability Discrimination Act, which was partly what we needed, but we needed a lot more amendments up until 2005 to make it anything like a firm piece of human rights legislation. But at that time, researchers at Leeds, led by Tom Shakespeare and Kath Gillespie-Sells, wanted to look at, well, how are disabled people different or the same from everybody else in terms of their sexuality? And they worked with 45 disabled activists. So they had the community of the disability movement, unlike most disabled people and they came up with testimonies that reclaim people's sexual experience, but it mounts a challenge to non-disabled people's world to accept us as being sexual beings, which of course we are. Secondly, it places the issue of sexuality in relationships on the agenda of the disability movement, which had not really confronted it. And thirdly, it offered disabled people themselves individual validation for their stories. But there was clearly problems even with this group of empowered people. Next slide. We also had, looking at people with intellectual impairments, learning difficulties, a piece of work done by Change, an organisation run by people with learning difficulties in Leeds. Through theatre, they managed to gather information from young disabled people with learning difficulties about their sexuality, and they came up with these asks. There needs to be more accessible information. There should be more support for young people with learning disabilities about sex and relationships. Parents and young people with learning disabilities should get more support. Families from BME communities should get the right support. Often they found that group to be less informed than even the rest. Young people with learning difficulties need more chances to meet with friends and be independent. Parents too overprotective was the main thing that came out. People should see sex education for people with learning difficulties as important. There needs to be a better training for professionals about it. And young people with learning disabilities have a right to sex education, indeed a right to choosing their sexual orientation and exercising it. And they produced a lot of useful resources, and that we've just seen from last year is now compulsory sex education for all learners has come in. but there is still a hesitancy there with many parents trying to stop their children having it. This is a human right, and those children have a right, and young people have a right to have this, and we need to support them. Yes, in sensitive ways, protection as well as other things, but it nevertheless needs to inform them for an adult life. Next. There was one third study by Kirsty Lydiard, which said, well, I'm going to look at 24 disabled people who are not part of the disability movement. She looked at them in the southeast of England, and she found disabled men and women were significantly disempowered by sexual norms. Disabled men could exercise more sexual power and had better sexual access. Not surprisingly, as we've heard in the last few years, we live in a totally sexist society, and so even male disabled power is stronger than disabled women, and so they could be oppressed in that way. Disabled men and women had to carry out forms of work within a variety of spaces in their private and intimate lives these impacted. So they were working in a mainstream environment, but they weren't really ready for this in the way they saw themselves. Impairment and different types of impairment were important, and with the cutbacks on personal assistance that we've seen, what's wrong with your personal assistant getting you ready to have sex with a chosen partner? A lot of people would cry away from that, but it has to be, with Article 19 independent living, that it is for the adult to decide what they want to do and how they want to express themselves. But we also found that participants experience substantial sexual oppression, psycho-emotional disablism, because of the attitudes from their peers, attitudes at school, attitudes in the community, and very importantly, attitudes in the media, which totally distort how we're seen. Next slide, please. So we can draw from all this, both for people with invisible impairments, but also those with sexual and relationship need, that disablism can be described as a network of beliefs and structures in society through which non-impairment is seen as superior as the normal, natural and desired bodily mental state. In a disability society, impairment is cast as inferior, defective and less than human, creating barriers that disable in attitude, self-esteem, organisation. Therefore, disabled people must strive to become normal or challenge with their own counterculture. We need, out of Disability History Months like this in Nottingham, to encourage, and they've got plenty of organisation involved, that counterculture where people feel okay about themselves and can express themselves as they want, and people who criticise them are challenged, and challenged publicly when they say things like, what's wrong with you, look normal, and in the media. Next slide. And behind all of this is the thinking of the disabled people's movement and the transition, which is still the dominant view, even though the government says they support the social model of disability. The dominant view in dealing with disabled people, those 14 million disabled people, is the medical model. And that's been enhanced through COVID, enhanced through cutbacks in things. And it is not an accident that we have taken 2/3 of the deaths, particularly amongst people with learning difficulties, 30 times higher for young people with learning difficulties during the COVID, because the medical model is what is operating rather than the social model. For instance, if we had the right to live in the community with the right support, there would have been far fewer people in institutions and care homes, and therefore far fewer people would have died. Secondly, our support would not have been cut back, so we were not exposed to the virus. And thirdly, information would have been put in accessible formats to everyone from the start, rather than us having to fight for it. So that illustrates very well how the medical model still dominates everything to do with us, and that the problem is the disabling world is not how most people see it. They see the problem in us, and that's where their thinking is wrong, and why we have to keep having Disability History Month and fight for this social model approach. Thank you. Next slide. So if we look at impairments, click the rest in a minute. There are many impairments. Many of those have no visible signs. People with hidden impairments are still discriminated against. It's important that everybody knows this definition. If you don't know it, you should learn it off by heart. Click next one. You are disabled under the Equality Act if you have a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial, which means more than minor and trivial, and long-term, which means 12 months or more, or likely to be 12 months or more, negative effect So more than a minor or trivial long-term effect, more than 12 months or likely to be, on your ability to do normal day-to-day activities. That's not specialist activities like being a watch repairer or soldering a computer together. It's normal day-to-day activities like getting up, getting yourself dressed, shopping, making meals, going out on the public transport, going to work, going to school, going to college, going to the NHS, going to a doctor's appointment. If you have negative impacts because of your impairment on that, you are a disabled person under the Equality Act. And next, can we click up the rest, please? I'll go through them. So this includes mental health conditions, symptoms, anxiety, low mood, panic attacks, phobias, unshared perceptions, eating disorders, bipolar affective disorder, obsessive compulsive disorders, personality disorders, post-traumatic stress, and so on. Many more. Let's click them all up, please. Keep going. Autoimmune conditions, those with disfigurement, HIV, multiple sclerosis, and cancer are seen as disabled from the moment of diagnosis. The others have to meet this test. Fluctuating conditions, if it occurs more than once, it's likely to be the case. So that includes things like fibromyalgia, sickle cell, endometriosis, which is 10% of women. So, you know, we need to broaden our definition. Sickle cell and lupus, which affect Black ethnic minority communities more. Diabetes, which affects the South Asian community much more. Learning difficulties, development, autistic spectrum, which could be as many as 20% of the population with ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, neurodiversity, and brain injury and other injuries, loss of limbs, and so on. This is a huge, huge group who are entitled to say to their employer, I am disabled under the Equality Act and I require reasonable adjustments. And if you do not make reasonable adjustments for me, then you are discriminating, and I can take you with the help of my union or my disability organisation to the tribunal, and I'm very likely to win. So employers need to have training to know that they need to make reasonable adjustments. It's not everything that someone wants, but it is, for instance, if they need, because of their condition, to go a couple of days extra to hospital appointments, that they're not penalised with a sickness monitoring scheme. It should be separate from the sickness monitoring scheme. There should be training for all their workplace colleagues so that they don't make remarks about people which can be consumed as harassment. And the employer is responsible for the harassment of their employees and for those who make it. And so it's a disciplinable offence, and we need to change the culture in our workplaces. Next slide. So, to end, what is our message this year, which I'm sure you've already been saying in many of your contributions? Challenge disableist assumptions and comments and policies where you live, work, travel, and play. If you have a hidden impairment, come out to your friends, workplace colleagues, and employers. That isn't always easy, and it maybe is your right. It is your right under law. Once you've informed someone in your line management that you are a disabled person, you can ask them to keep it secret, confidential, and you have a right to confidentiality. And if they breach that, they can be taken to the tribunal as well for victimization of you. Ask for reasonable adjustments in shops, theatres, cinemas, restaurants, work, in your union, in your school, college, political party. They're all covered by the Equality Act because disability is a characteristic that is covered by that, and it often intersects with other characteristics like gender, sex, disability, race, age, and religion. And there can be intersections of these things. Get your union group or colleagues at work to support you. If you don't know what disabled people need, ask them. As someone was saying on the film there, do not assume. So the elephant in the room in any social situations is that there are a lot of people who are disabled but are either too frightened to say or have chosen not to say at great cost to themselves because it raises the stress levels. People with chronic fatigue, for instance, need to do things in a different way. And actually, the one benefit of COVID was home working because a lot of people could adjust to their levels of energy in working. So we have seen some positive things from that, but we need to keep going until everybody understands this. And one of the ways we want people to pressure for this is to get your local authority to try and get Disability History Month into the curriculum of schools and colleges, so everybody has to focus on this, not just now, but throughout the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Richard. That was absolutely fantastic. And as always, when I've heard you speak, so thought-provoking. You managed to pack in so much in such a short space of time. My head is swimming with ideas and thoughts, as I'm sure other colleagues will be as well. You know, it's been a very, very long journey, and we are certainly not there yet. And some of the things that you quoted, I'm aware of, but it's still chilling to hear of the journey of oppression that has happened and taken place. It seems not so long ago to me, being slightly older in years, since the Disability Discrimination Act 95 came into effect. It wasn't perfect. It still isn't for the Equality Act. There's so much more that can be done. But thank you for challenging us as an integrated care system, as an ICS, and we will certainly take forward some of those thoughts. And together, we are joined with many colleagues who are actually part of the counterculture so thank you again.
And keep taking it up to your management may think this is good, but there's still a lot of NHS trusts who are not putting this on the agenda. We need to keep pressure till the whole of the NHS, the whole of social service, the whole of education are actually taking it seriously, because only then will we get the sort of change in society we need. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will have to leave you now because I've got other meetings. Is that all right? So thank you very much.
That's all right.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to move on now. Giles is going to introduce Lisa.
I am. So thank you. This is somebody we've known for quite a long time, actually. Lisa Warnock. It's a film. Lisa's now with Nottinghamshire County Council. Amongst other things, Lisa Warnock is a promoting independence worker for the county-wide adult deaf and visual impairment service at Nottinghamshire County Council. She's also an advocate and champion for deaf people in the city, the county and beyond. And this video is about Lisa's life experience in general as a deaf person. It's in British Sign Language and is simply called Lisa's Experience.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa Warnock. I'm profoundly deaf and I use interpreters, so you'll hear a voiceover for this presentation because I'm using an interpreter. Sign language is my first and preferred language. It's a visual language. So I'm here to talk to you about my journey and some of the barriers that I faced. I was born deaf and I then had Bell's palsy at a very early age. I started school at 3.5 till I was 17. I was at a residential school and the teaching method was an oral teaching method. At home I didn't use sign language either, I just used some sort of gestures with my family. At 3.5 I already had hearing aids and I had a body worn aid. And when I got to the deaf school, I realised that there were other children like me and I immediately connected with them. I didn't up to that point have any appreciation of the difference between deaf people and hearing people. And that really didn't hit me until I was much older as an adult. And I learnt sign language through other deaf children at playtime outside of the classroom. At secondary school, they were very strict and we were taught lessons and we were taught speech and we would get good and bad marks depending on how good or bad our speech was. And there was one young boy who was from a profoundly deaf family and he was always being punished for his speech and because he used sign language, because that's the way he acquired information. At 16 I did some exams. They were lower than GCSEs, they were CSEs. And I remember I did 7 subjects and I got my results and I showed them to my mum. My mum was a qualified teacher of the deaf at that time, and I got grade 4 in English. And I thought that was really poor, but Mum was saying, no, that's fine, no, that's, you know, that's the same level as an 11-year-old, a hearing 11-year-old. You know, and I just felt that I was so far behind. Then I went to college, and they weren't particularly deaf aware at the college. So it was a mainstream college, although we stayed in a deaf residential setting. It was a mainstream college, full of hearing people, and it was really difficult to follow what was going on, and I did really badly at college. When I left college, my dad looked for a job for me, and he found me a job in the local area, and he went with me to the interview. And I remember being there, and my dad and the person interviewing me just sat and chatted. I just sat and smiled, looked pretty, and then they offered me a job. Great. But you know, I've no idea what my dad had said. Anyway, it wasn't easy working in a hearing environment, trying to lip read with people talking all around me. It was very, very difficult. I could understand, you know, my dad's speech, but not others. And then, you know, it really hit me when I found a local deaf club, because I really found my own deaf identity. Deaf people would come together from all over the area. And, you know, when I was in the deaf club, it was like a second home for me. You know, and then I'd go out into a hearing environment. And that's where I found my deaf identity. I knew that that was my world, the deaf world. And I remember going to work for the first time, you know, the real difference there was with communication. But, you know, I managed, and life went on. And I had to adapt how I communicated with people. And some people I could understand 1 or 2 words, but you know, not full sentences. Others I couldn't understand at all, so I used to have to write things down. So this was through my sort of late teens. And then I met somebody from Nottingham, and I moved to Nottingham to be with him, and came to the Nottingham Deaf Society, and was amazed. It was a big organisation, lots of deaf people, there was lots of stuff going on for deaf people, lots of activities. And then I applied for a job actually at the Deaf Centre in Nottingham, and I got offered that interview, and I went along, and they said, oh, you know, you can sign in an interview, we've got an interpreter. And that was my first experience of being offered an interpreter in an interview setting. And I was successful with that job, and working at the Deaf Society was so much easier because they were deaf friendly and deaf aware. They would support me with equipment, so I had a flashing light for the doorbell, for the fire alarm, for the phone. There was a text phone that I could use, and the staff at the Deaf Society could all sign at different levels. So I was there for 23 years, and during my time at the Deaf Society I learned a lot about deaf issues, a lot of the issues that other deaf people faced, the barriers that they had to overcome, and in particular issues around access to health. And you know, there were some serious barriers in those days for deaf people accessing health services. I was involved in the campaigns about the recognition of BSL during that time. You know, it took a long time to get the government to recognise BSL, and that happened in March 2003. Finally, it was recognised. And after that, interpreter training developed and expanded, and we saw more interpreters available for deaf people in health centres, in legal centres, in workplaces. So that was really good. And you could see deaf people, it was, you know, coming out of themselves and being able to take an equal part in mainstream society, which had been very different to how it had prior to that. As I said earlier, I had quite a low reading age when I left school, and I don't pick up, you know, incidental information in the same way that hearing people do. 2012, I started working for Nottingham County Council as a support worker for people who had a dual sensory loss and to promote independence in their own homes and to support people in what their needs are. So, you know, if they need somebody to help them with their correspondence or a variety of different tasks, or perhaps with English. I work for the Adult Deaf Visual Impairment Service, and, you know, staff there had been working with deaf people for a number of years by the time I joined that team, but it's been a great team to be part of. And over the years, equipment has really improved. And, you know, over the last year in particular, it's been, you know, it's been a tough year, but things have definitely had some positives as well. And I've, for some time, been talking to my team about the importance of being able to communicate remotely with deaf people through FaceTime and other video mechanisms. And, you know, I've been able to now use FaceTime as part of my work. They've given me an iPad so that I'm able to work independently from home and contact clients who have needed my support. And as a deaf person, I say I've got a strong deaf identity and deaf culture. And so I've grown up being a sign language user, and that's who I am. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really good. Certainly tested my signing ability there. It made me realise how much I'd forgotten by not actually signing very often. We're going to move on now to a mindfulness and wellbeing session. And this is going to be run by Monica Dakin and Tracy Orlandi from Nottinghamshire Healthcare and Nottingham City Homes. Thank you.
Hello everybody, thank you very much for inviting me today. So my name is Monica Dakin and I'm the welfare lead at Nottingham City Homes. Life has become increasingly busy, and so the need to stop, pause and to take a breath has never been so important. So in 2010, myself struggling with some work-related stress within the previous role, I was introduced to mindfulness through my person who had given me some acupuncture at the time, and in particular a book and a CD. CDs, they sound so old now, don't they? Peace in a Frantic World. The practices are simple and they were pioneering at the time, but every working day I'm supporting people who are struggling for one reason or another, and I always suggest mindfulness. So hopefully everybody's on mute, otherwise we're going to have some heavy breathing. But before we start, it might be really helpful to visualise sort of an hourglass shape. And there's the hourglass shape of the breathing space. Visualise the hourglass shape to view your awareness during the breathing space as forming the shape of an hourglass. So before we start, it will be helpful for you to visualise this hourglass shape and to sit comfortably, and if you want to close your eyes. So if we think about the wide opening at the top of an hourglass, it's like the first step of the breathing space, and in this you're opening your attention and gently acknowledging whatever is entering and leaving awareness. The second step of the breathing space is the narrowing of the hourglass neck. It's where you focus your attention on the breath in the lower abdomen. You focus on the physical sensations of breathing, gently coaxing the mind back to the breath when it wanders, and this helps to anchor the mind, grounding you back in the present. The third step of the breathing space is like the broadening base of an hourglass. In this you open your awareness, and in this opening you are opening to life as it is, preparing yourself for the next moments of your day. Here you are, gently but firmly reaffirming a sense that you have a place in the world, your whole mind, body, just as it is, in all its peace, dignity and completeness. So, making sure you're comfortable, taking a breathing space, deliberately adopt a posture so it embodies being seen and being awake. Let's start with step 1, seeing what's going on in your mind and body right now. What's the weather pattern like? What thoughts are around? What feelings are here? What body sensations are here right now? Not trying to change them in any way. Now moving on to step 2, redirecting the attention to a narrow spotlight on the physical sensations of the breath. Moving close to the physical sensations of the breath in the abdomen, expanding as the breath comes in and falling back as the breath goes out. As the breath comes in and the breath goes out. Follow the breath all the way in and all the way out. All the way in and all the way out. Use each breath as an opportunity to anchor yourself into the present. And if the mind wanders, gently escort the attention back to the breath. Step 3. Expand the field of awareness around the breathing so that it includes a sense of the body as a whole, aware of your posture and facial expression, sensation on the skin and right inside the whole body. Holding them just as they are, coming home to the body, coming home to this moment. Now open your eyes and adjust to the light. There's lots of different mindfulness and meditations to choose from, including Headspace and the Daily Calm, to name a few. But it really is important to explore different types of mindfulness and meditations to find a voice you are comfortable with. Now I'm going to hand you over to Tracy, who has some exciting opportunities for you to learn more and grow your knowledge. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Monica. I've had a bit of a busy week this week, and that was just what I needed. So thank you very much for delivering that session. Now, I know we are really short of time, so I'm going to move through these slides quite quickly, just because I know that they'll be available in the pack for people who might want to revisit this information. So I just wanted to quickly talk to you all about the new Nottinghamshire Staff Support Hub, which has been commissioned to help support staff through what's been perhaps the most challenging 18 months of many of our careers, but also recognising, particularly from some of the stories today, that on the backdrop of the current pandemic and how we're working, we also have very busy and sometimes challenging lives where we might need a little bit of additional support. So the Nottinghamshire Staff Support Hub is here for all health and social care across Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. And it's a free and confidential service to provide impartial listening, a confidential space, or even access to mental health or clinical assessments and specialised treatment. And what I think is really important about this slide is it's completely funded and designated for health and social care. And what I've been hearing and seeing is people having a little bit of hesitancy to access services because they don't want to take that valuable resource away from the patients or service users that we provide services to. And actually, if we aren't as well as we can be, then we aren't able to care for those service users and or patients. So we really want people to be able to access this service. It's a multi-professional team. We're open Monday to Friday, but we also have out-of-hours services for people who feel that they've come to a point of perhaps crisis or emotional distress. We offer free and confidential support, which can be a conversation, as I mentioned, could be an assessment, single signposting, or single session advice through intertherapeutic support, or something more structured. And we can always provide a follow-up on a case management approach to make sure that people are as well as they possibly can be. And the rapid is that we respond to people within 1 to 2 days. Now, what's interesting with this service is that we're responding at a time of need, but we also want to be proactive in our approach and make sure that people don't necessarily get to that point. And this is where the mindfulness comes in. So as part of our overarching package of outreach and prevention, we'll be launching imminently within the next few days a whole range of mindfulness services for all health and social care. So everybody that's in this forum here today. So some organisations such as Nottingham University Hospitals already offer mindfulness, but other organisations may not have this resource. And as Monica said, some of the online tools that are available may not meet people's personal preferences. So we are absolutely delighted to provide access to drop-in online mindfulness sessions where people who haven't tried mindfulness before or have just tried Monica's session and valued it want to access that again. People can also have guided mindfulness through the session and just drop in, for a bit of a booster. We then have more structured mindfulness workshops with a focus on enhancing general well-being, extended introductory courses where people have the ability to attend. And for those people perhaps with a diagnosed underlying health conditions such as depression, acute stress, anxiety, we also have some courses which are clinically validated to provide additional support as part of an overarching treatment package. So if that's of interest to you, if you felt impacted at all by anything that we've shared today, or the compelling stories that we've had from some of our colleagues, and you think actually that's me and I could do with some support, we just want to let you know you're not alone. This is how you can access our service. Again, the details will be available after today's session, and we'd be happy to help in any way that we can, either for you, somebody that you work with, colleague or friend. And if we can't help, we'll certainly know somebody who can, and we'll do that signposting for you. So thank you for letting me present that information today, and I shall hand back over to our hosts. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Oh, sorry about that. That was absolutely brilliant, Monica and Tracy. Thank you so much. The mindfulness just was brilliant, perfect. So without further ado, on to our next speaker, who is Jules Fleckney-Jones, and who is talking about living and working with a mental health condition. Now, Jules has worked for Notts Healthcare for the last 2 years, but has worked in the NHS since 2008. Please watch this inspirational story as Jules shares their personal experience of mental health problems since being a teenager, which ultimately led to a breakdown in later life.
Hi, my name is Jules Fleckney-Jones. I work for Nottinghamshire Healthcare as a health and safety advisor. I'm passionate about supporting the organisation on how it works with staff who've got mental health conditions. So in my case, I've lived with depression and anxiety for quite a long time. So 1 in 4 people is affected by mental health in every year. That's a quarter of the population. And there's lots of statistics out there to demonstrate how there is prejudice out there against people with mental health problems. The biggest problem is it's a hidden disability, so you can't tell from looking at someone whether they have a mental health problem or not. So my story, I've had depression since I've had anxiety and shown a lot of low mood and depression since a very early age. I was an anxious child, always wanting to stop people getting in trouble, didn't like shouting, always had to be everywhere on time and follow the rules. I had a breakdown in 2014, which wasn't a good place to be. It was a very, very dark place. I can remember the day as if it was yesterday. I can sometimes feel isolated. Yes, someone with depression usually does think they're a burden to others, and that's a common trait. You need to talk to get things straight in your head. You can have these conversations with yourself, but when you talk to others, it's easier to explain it and easier to get it straight in your head. You need to feel understood, because some of the times you don't understand it yourself. Yes, dark thoughts. Now, people usually say that the world is better off without them. I've changed that around and sometimes think that I'm better off without the world, because it's me that can't cope with the world that I live in, rather than the world can't cope with me. Self-harming, it's not something I've done. My only self-harm, I guess, would be eating, because I eat a lot when I'm depressed or anxious. People with mental health issues need to have some control over their life, because mental health is something you can't really control. Mine is controlled with medication at the moment. People with hidden illnesses don't want to be treated differently. They want to be treated equally, bearing in mind that they have a disability. Now, there's certain things in life where you could say this has contributed towards depression. But it's difficult to know, because my mother had depression. My mother had a breakdown when I was 14. And it's difficult to tell whether it is situational or whether it's due to a chemical imbalance. However, being on medication, I am able to function better. So you see from all my pictures here of me growing up, I've always got a smile on my face. I used to have a science teacher who used to call me Smiler. And apparently when I was a toddler, I used to wake up giggling. And everyone said I was always a happy child. So I've had a lot go on in my life. I have gender dysphoria. I don't understand that myself at the moment, because I only came out 2 years ago. I had some struggles as a child. Some things happened that shouldn't have happened, that sort of affected how I behave in certain situations. In 2001, my mum died of cancer. In 2002, I had to break the news to my father that I had a brain tumour. Luckily, it was a benign brain tumour. That left me with single-sided deafness. It also left me with headaches in one side of my head. That tumour grew back in 2012, where I had it removed again. This time it left me with trigeminal neuralgia, which, if any of you know it, its nickname is suicide disease, because the pain is so intense. It's like having constant toothache all the time, and you get muscle spasms in your face. That is currently treated by Botox injections done clinically in a hospital. Yes, I've had lots of other things happen to me. I've had lots of different surgeries in my life. And it's difficult, it is really difficult to tell what came first, so to speak, the chicken or the egg. Did I always have depression? Was depression as a result of my life? But I'm not going to allow it to define me. My happy face, I hope to keep my happy face for a long time to come. On a really bad day, I can't find the energy to get washed and dressed. Any of you seen Harry Potter, you'll see the Dementors. Now, J.K. Rowling views the Dementors as her depression. They come and suck the energy out of you, and that is exactly what it's like. I often want to sleep a lot. My mind goes round in circles, thinking about every bad choice you've ever made in life and any stupid thing you've ever said. Sometimes I can't stop crying, and sometimes I do want to give up. So there are lots of things that contribute to the way I feel. Now, because I have a mental health issue, doesn't mean that people can't upset me. Someone might have just given me some bad news. someone might have said something to me that's upset me. So it's about thinking about what you say to people. And if you got a question for someone like me, ask that question. Don't listen to what other people say and don't prejudge. Like, depression isn't a bad mood, it's not a state of mind, it's not a choice, and it's definitely not PMT. I'm not a risk to other people, but I could be more of a risk to myself. So these are things that have all been said to me. Are you still taking your tablets? You have so much to be grateful for. Happiness is a choice. People have it worse than you. Oh no, we're not going there again. Are you fit to be at work? Well, that explains everything. Think about being in the shoes of someone like me. If you're able to stand in my shoes and get as far in life as I've got, then you'll really realise how strong I am as a person. Things that help. I had a GP and what I heard him say was get a life. Don't get me wrong, he didn't actually say get a life. He said that I needed to do things outside of work. So I joined a choir, I started doing crafts and woodwork and cycling. And I like walking by the water, and I love my cat. So what can you do? It's about treating people with respect, being kind to people. And remember, if someone comes and talks to you, you can't fix them. You just need to be there to listen. What can employers do? Well, like Notts Healthcare Trust, they can have trained mental health first aiders. Look at the organisation to see whether it treats mental health like any other disability. And consider if policies work with mental health issues. And the best way to do that is to get champions who understand mental health from across your organisation and get them involved with policy writing. You don't have to see the whole staircase as long as you take the first step. So it doesn't have to be right now, but if you take small steps, you will be helping to support. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I've known Jules for a long time, and seeing that really does inspire me to think outside of my box and think what other people are living their lives and how they're living them. So thank you for Jules. I'd like to introduce now our Catherine and David. So Catherine from Nottinghamshire Healthcare and David from Nottingham City Care, who are going to do a quiz for you.
We're in. Excellent. So what you'll need is a smartphone or the device to be able to hopefully be able to see the two different things. So if you go to Kahoot, which is kahoot.it, and then you put the game PIN code in, which is 9234629, then hopefully it will then appear in front of you. And we'll hopefully find a few people gradually joining. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to try and get people online to get into the actual quiz. And then we'll crack into the questions.
And while we're waiting for people, Scott's going to be running the show for us. He's our very own Carol Vorderman, and he's got the brains and the beauty to match that as well, haven't you, Scott?
I do, thank you, Catherine.
And then if we're lucky, David will even sing to us while we're getting ready. So at the moment, we've only got Denise on. So come on, guys, www.kahoot.it with the game app 9234629. Scott, what's your Kahoot name? Are you on there?
I go by various, but I'm not on here today, obviously, as I'm running it. I don't want to come in first place, of course. But I normally go by Scotty T. I do like Scotty T. Anyone can remember wrestling today?
See, I thought that was like Scottish blend tea bags. Scotty T. Not competitive. See, Tallulah Conch, which is my alter ego, is absolutely gutted that she can't be on today. And she said she knows all the answers to the questions, so.
I feel like the reason you asked me to join you for doing this, Catherine, is you know how overly competitive I get when doing this in the past and how cross I then get when I don't win.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why you've invited me, because you obviously know that how witty and
yeah,
what a fantastic presenter I am, but it's actually just in everyone's interests. I think it's weird.
So just to add, this is for the honour of winning, and the prize winner will get a certificate. And we might even use it to have a cup of coffee with Giles Matzel.
Yay!
Right, shall we make a start? We've got 12 quizzes.
Slarty Batfors. That has to be Laurie, is it? Okay, David, you ready to roll?
Yep. There we go. I've had an extra one join. Here we go.
So the first question is, in which TV crime drama did Liz Carr play the role of forensic scientist Clarissa Mullery? You've got 10 seconds to answer. The Bill, Silent Witness, Line of Duty, or Broadchurch?
The faster you answer the question, the more points you get. You've got to be.
Interesting factoid is that Liz Carr, when she did a civil partnership in 2010 to Joe Church, called it a really special wedding. And she and her wife danced to Dirty Dancing, and the local fire brigade held her in her chair up. And it's available on YouTube to watch, and I watched it last night, and it's wonderful. It's really funny, but also really passionate. So next question, please.
What percentage of the working age population in the UK have a disability? 9%, 19%, 29%, or 39%? Oh, everyone's getting really fast. I can feel that how quickly people are straight on it now. It's like shooting stars. It's like, really want to see those fingers.
Fastest finger first.
Fastest finger first, exactly.
Oh, great. And the third question. Hasib Ahmad from Leicester is the world's fastest blind Ironman. What are the 3 sports an Ironman must compete in? Cycling, running and swimming, cycling, long jump and swimming, archery, cycling and running, and long jump, archery and running. And the answer is cycling, running and swimming. Well done, 10 out of 10. And you get bonus points if you put in the chat the name of Hasib's dog, and I'll give you a clue. And this is a really bad Scottish Glaswegian accent.
Right, quick.
It basically says...
sorry.
It doesn't have to have more than 4 letters. Oh.
Which singer was runner-up in the 2019 Britain's Got Talent contest singing I Dreamed a Dream from Les Mis? Sam Bailey, Leona Lewis, Susan Boyle, Rebecca Ferguson. Oh, we ran through that so fast you didn't get to hear me singing Dreamed a Dream.
Oh, we've still got time. Quick.
I dreamed a dream. Excellent. I do have perfect pitch.
We'll move on, shall we, David? Yes, I think it's now the right time. Question 5. How many times has Dame Tanni Gray-Thompson won the London Marathon? 1, 3, 5, or 6? And the winning answer is 6. And she's also got 16 Paralympic medals.
Okay. Which North American city hosted the last Invictus Games in 2017? Toronto, Washington, Dallas, or Seattle? Toronto. I've seen these answers and I couldn't even remember which one that was. So it's Toronto. Well done, everyone. Well, about half the people got that right.
Oh, Slarty Batfars is still in the leaderboard. So which type of musical instrument is the deaf musician Evelyn Glennie best known for? Brass, string, percussion, and wind? And the winning answer is percussion. Interesting factoid, she plays the bagpipes as well, and often plays percussion without shoes on her feet, because she can feel the music better. Oh. Next question.
Which 2014 film portrayed the early life of the theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking? My Left Foot, The Theory of Everything, Still Alice, or Wonder? The answer is Theory of Everything, and everybody got that one right.
Well done.
Next one.
Which sport is athlete and TV presenter Adi Adipan best known for? Wheelchair basketball, wheelchair rugby, wheelchair tennis, or wheelchair fencing? And the winning answer is wheelchair basketball. And do you know, David, that he's also been in Casualty and Desperados as an actor?
Oh.
Multi-talented.
Yeah.
Just like our Scott.
It's getting competitive near the top. What percentage of the population will experience a mental health problem of some kind each year in England? 5%, 10%, 25%, or 50%? Correct answer was 25%. You actually got that right again.
Very well done. Slarty's on fire, as Jen says. Oh, was that Happy Days coming up as well? We'll pick it up in a second. Which TV consumer show is broadcast and documentary maker Nicky Fox best known for? Watchdog, Rip Off Britain, Fake Britain, or Rogue Traders? Difficult question, because they're all very alike. And the answer is Watchdog. And she was actually known as last year's most powerful disabled person.
It's close.
Oh,
Don't know if you can see the screen, but there's barely a few points in it. Definitely looks like a two-horse race.
Poppy's on the way up, though.
The first Paralympic Games took place in 1960. Which European city was it held in? Paris, Barcelona, Rome, or Vienna?
Barcelona. That's not the answer. I don't know.
The answer was Rome.
Roma. Oh, Slutty Bartfars. On Happy Days. There's not much in it.
In there.
Oh, JJJ. And which date is International Day of Persons with Disabilities held each year? 14th of February, 4th of July, 5th of November, or 3rd of December?
I do know this one.
I think you should know. It's today. It's the 3rd of December every year. Oh, Slutty Buttfars was fast on the finger.
Yeah. Which American singer, actress, and TV personality starred in the 1990 film Mermaids and later in Mamma Mia? Cher, Julie Andrews, Barbra Streisand, or Diana Ross?
You going to give them a clue?
How does it go? Is it in his kiss? I don't think that helped. If anything, that's
where it is.
I don't know if I made that more difficult, if anything.
Yeah.
Still, 10 people managed to get it. Obviously, from my clue, I imagine they didn't have any idea before that.
Yeah. No.
Here we go then.
So the winning answer was Cher. Yeah.
It was Cher. Sorry, I thought that was obvious from my impression. Sorry. So before the last question, quick review. It looks like a three-horse race going into the last question. Slarty, Bartfast, Happy Days, and Truman are all in. Here we go.
Yep, well done to Triple J and Poppy. They're coming in there.
Oh yeah, it's close. Here we go.
Last question: what is the name of the Britain's biggest mental health charity? Scope, Sense, Mind, or UNICEF? Come on, fastest finger first. And the answer is Mind. So take us to your leaderboard, Scotty.
Drum roll.
Oh, Truman.
Third for Truman. Oh, second for Happy Days.
And the winner is Slotty Bat Bars! Whee! And Triple J and Poppy were runners up, so well done, everybody. Yep, Paul Devlin needs a dose of mindfulness after that event. So, yeah, another dose of mindfulness and well-being after that. Excellent. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And can Slotty Bat Bars tell us who they are in the chat or privately, and we'll send them a certificate. Okay, over to you, Tracy and Giles.
Yeah, we've got one last thing on our schedule for this afternoon, and that is a poem by When You Look at Me, called When You Look at Me by Alison Parsons from Sherwood Forest Hospitals Trusts.
International Day of Persons with Disabilities is a really special day, a day when we can all come together and celebrate those with disabilities. This year's theme of hidden disabilities really resonated with me. I suffer with health conditions that can't be seen, and sometimes it's difficult. I've written a poem, and I'd like to share it with you now. When you look at me, what do you see? Is it someone confident, assured, bright, and happy? Would you ever guess I'm hiding from you the pain that's in me? The physical pain, the mental distress, they don't affect the way that I dress. You see me whole, there's nothing wrong. But some days I struggle all day long. If I'm struggling, I try to hide it. I fear stigma, even just a little bit. What might people think of me? A physical and mental mess is she. I take tablets to ease my physical pain and medication every night to balance my brain. But how would I cope if people judge me because I have health conditions that they cannot see? I wrote this poem so people can see. Working at Sherwood, I can be me. Judgment and stigma may be there, but in the majority, I know my colleagues care. So if you're a person who's prone to judge, please be aware, health difficulties don't budge. Disabilities can be hidden from sight, and the person you judge may be in a great fight. Thank you for listening, and enjoy today's celebrations.
Wow, and we send our love to Alison, of course, and it's unfortunate she couldn't be here with us today, but she is. We're thinking of her.
Well, I think this takes us to the end of our afternoon, Giles.
It certainly does, Tracy, and I think it's been an absolutely fantastic event. And all it leaves us to say really is thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you for everybody that's attended. It's been just to rewind at the beginning, I said it was going to be emotive, challenging, powerful, but also inspiring. And I think it's covered all of those things. And there is a lot to take from this, of course. We can review it again, especially one of the keynote speeches from Richard Reiser. So we would recommend, as soon as the link is available, that you do circulate within your organisations. I'll certainly be reviewing it again. It just leads me to say thank you, Tracy, for co-hosting.
And to you, Giles, as well. Lovely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Take care, everybody, and thank you.
Bye.